Well, welcome to our relaunch of the podcast, formerly known as the No Hassle Podcast. Now we are rebranding a little bit as Shop Talk with Roy and James, and we are coming to you from Gretna, Louisiana, here at our shop today to really just kind of recenter, this podcast that we wanted to do. We really had a desire to do it a while back, but obviously running a small business, a lot of things come up and things were happening and we just weren't able to be consistent with it. But we're going to challenge ourselves before the new year to get into a new pattern so we don't have to kind of muster it all up on January 1st. And so on that note, we're here today with Shop Talk. Well, we're going to be talking about stuff, everything from just how to run a small business, our experience with small business, all of the things that are pertinent and related to the business itself. But we also see, a time where we'll, get into some more personal aspects of running a business, the emotional side, the relational, the family side, the spiritual side. All of those things will probably be culminated at some point in an episode down the road. So, but right now, I guess I just want to introduce my partner here, James St. Jean. We've been here we've been friends for how long now?
A decade.
A good decade. Man, it goes quick. But why don't you fill the folks in just quickly on our business, who we are, and what's been going on the last 7 years?
Yeah, definitely. So we're All Things Services Exterior Cleaning, a local family-owned soft washing, pressure washing company for commercial residential. We've been doing this 8 years technically, but really business license since 2018. So over 7 years of experience. Basically started from an idea, hey, we clean windows, maybe we'll clean pressure wash houses. And then we
started cutting grass, actually.
Actually, yeah, cutting grass with the idea that, hey, we're going to be pressure washers. Mm-hmm. Started with basically a truck, a used 2-gallon-a-minute washing machine, pressure washing machine. And from there, we've grown it where now we're in our own shop. Went from your backyard to now we're in a shop. Have a full F-350 truck with a rig, commercial hot water trailer, proportioner, blend soft washing equipment. So really from not knowing anything to going through the school of hard knocks and learning the hard way and developing here we are 8 years with business.
8 years later, and it's still just as difficult as it was on day one. Well, in a sense, and that's going to kind of lead into today's topic because, I think on day one, I think what we had on our side then that we probably don't have now is, well, those are several things. Number one, our responsibilities were less than personally. At that time, James wasn't even married. Now you have
married, 3 kids.
3 kids, I'm expecting a child, so there's a lot going on now that's changed just, I guess commitment wise in our lives. So that's changed. So we that's added to a lot of the, just how we run the business and I guess the stress, if you want to put it that way, of running a business. But I think one of the things that a lot of people lose early on is just really that childlike wonder with the business. Everything's exciting and we're learning the process. And, it's like, remember the first pressure washing, the first house that we washed, I had come across a YouTube video that talked about using bleach. And of course we didn't know how to accurately use it. So I'm literally measuring like a teaspoon of bleach into a gallon of water and trying to put it on a house to see if it'll do anything. And it was frustrating, but there was a novelty to it at that time. And it was exciting as we were learning the processes. Well, that kind of fades as business gets more serious and, bills start to add up or you want to scale. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do, part of the podcast for me was really trying to recapture some of that kind of, wonder of those first couple of years where we were really excited about the business. And you tend to be excited about things, talk about things that you're excited about. So this part of my thing with the podcast is wanting to stir that up again, because as difficult as it's been, and as much as we've grown, everything comes at a cost, everything comes at a price. There's a lot of folks out there. I grew up in a family that owned businesses, not my immediate family, but my grandparents. And so I kind of grew up in the restaurant business, around furniture stores, all those kinds of things. My grandpa had apartment buildings, and I see how it kind of dominated their lives. I'm not interested in that, and I think to avoid that, we really need to stay focused on why we started the business, and just the simplicity of a hard day's work and just feeling accomplished at the end of the day, rather than just the dollar amount. We're Jesus loving guys, and we believe, firmly what the Bible teaches us, that, that we're not to be enamored with money. We don't want to try to serve both. We want to serve the Lord and just trust him with those things. And so really kind of focusing back in on why we started the business, how we started it, how we can improve it, and how we can grow it and scale it to a spot where it's actually beneficial for our lives and it doesn't become a more of a burden. Because we've seen that. I mean, how many guys have we known or you've seen around the industry who've grown their businesses and you can see a drastic change in their character from a distance. I mean, have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got into it to provide for our families, to be a blessing and a benefit to the community, to be able to share the good news of Jesus through it. And but you can see where you get overwhelmed with money, finances, you start growing, and it just becomes your life.
Yeah.
And so for us, we never set out for it to this be our end all be all. And
Yeah.
we just wanted to build something to really just provide and give us some flexibility and some freedom and that we kind of get to set on our terms, our standards, rather than us running the business, rather than the business running us. And so, yeah, you can see that where it grows on people and gets too much, or they're just so enamored with success,
Right.
right? And what success looks like, for service businesses, is it having 5, 10 trucks, 12 trucks going,
Hitting $1 million.
right? Getting, do we get Louisiana plus now we go to different states, things like that. So I think for us, we started with humble beginnings and really just keep that humility as we grow and continue just to grow in business.
Amen. And I think part of that really focus comes back to, like, the number one, the having that childlike wonder and just that appreciation for learning. We can't ever stop being learners. Like, we have to be constantly motivated to learn, challenge ourselves to learn new things and to get better at the things that we are learning. And so I think that's key in for us as running a successful business. Focusing less on the dollar amount and more on the quality of life. You know what I mean? Like, what has it provided us? How are we able to impact other people with our life, and our lifestyle versus, just how many cars you have parked in the driveway and hitting those monetary amounts. And so for us, that's kind of, we are numbers guys to the extent of, like, we don't want to mismanage what we have, but you know, um, I followed some guys, who are really adamant about setting a dollar amount goal for the year. I don't think that's necessarily bad, but at the same time, like, I don't want to feel like a failure or a success because we don't hit those numbers, because there's so many other things to judge that, engage that by. And that kind of leads into today's topic that I really wanted to talk about, which was number one, having that childlike wonder and enjoying the process. But then number two, like, providing a good experience for the customer. Like, I think businesses grow and they're going to succeed when people truly regain that desire to actually provide a service to
Right.
somebody from start to finish, not just do a good job. There's a slogan that we've used and modified over the years that it says, there's a lot of people doing good work, but great work is in the details. Well, the fact of the matter is now there's a lot of people doing great work, with the increase of technology and the streamlining of equipment. Man, there's a lot of guys who can get out there and shave off that learning curve that we had because things have just gotten better. So there's a lot of people doing great work, but what if great work's not enough anymore to grow a
Mhm.
business? We've got a million people doing what we do in the New Orleans metro area. There's got to be a way to separate ourselves, and not just in our business, but any service-based business, from somebody else. And I really think we have to get back to that, the full scope of the customer experience, creating a great customer experience, along with the good work, because that's, to me, it's worth. I mean, we found it with a very limited budget for advertising, that the customer experience is, like, crucial and vital at this point. We need that 5-star review. We want a referral. We want to have a shot at, performing services for them again next year. And so, I mean, wouldn't you say that, like, I mean, have you seen that yourself personally? Because, James is the primary sales guy here. Your experience with how we provide a full scope of the customer service and how it's changed, and, feedback you've maybe gotten from people over the last couple of years as we've grown in that area.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even when we started, we learned pretty quick because when we'd go bid on jobs, we were maybe the third or fourth person to wash this house. Right. So they've been getting their house serviced, they've been getting their driveway cleaned, they've been using our services, but they were just using different companies. So nobody stood out or nobody took the time to invest in enough to really just make them their client, their customer. And so I think right off the bat, we realized that one, how important our reputation is, as well as we want customers for life. We want to
Right.
build a business with a good foundation of clients and people that not only enjoy our services, but they're so impressed that, hey, I don't need to call anybody else because these guys do
Absolutely.
such a good job. And so I think that really changed I think really our whole process where we realized like, okay, we provide a decent service, especially after the first 2 years where we really learned
Mhm.
and grew. And then it was like, okay, how can we deliver a service where we're the top tier?
Yeah.
I like the saying where they use, you can go get a steak at like a Golden Corral, or you
Right.
can go to like a Ruth Chris's. And so what kind of company do you want to be? And we were like,
Right.
hey, we're going to be that higher end, really focus on the customer experience and deliver, a Ruth Chris service, I guess, but with pressure washing.
Yeah, and I think, the customer experience is the top number one separator between businesses these days.
Mhm.
There's you may for a season, and I know because we're fan of, we're foodie kind of guys, and so we'll frequent. It's hard for us to say, hey, we're not going back to a place. If the food's good, usually we'll power through
Right.
terrible service and kind of a more of a dive looking place because we want the food. But as inflation happened and things started to increase, and that's getting a little bit more picky now. It's like, well, hey, if I'm
Right.
going to drop $20 for a basic meal, I want to go to a place where I'm getting a more of a well-rounded experience. And so I think we're definitely at a stage in in the economy or in history where the customer experience is really that number one separator between who's going to continue to grow and succeed versus who's just going to stay at that same level. And so an example was, we're part of a ministry here in Gretna. We have a church building that's constantly needing work on. I'm a homeowner, always getting stuff done at my house. And so we're always keeping a running list of contractors, electrical, plumbing, just people that we can hopefully have to be able to give a referral to because people ask us all the time, but then we can also use. And so we were out on a job the other day, and there was a guy next door doing some AC work. And my dad, who's been helping us out, was with me on the job. And he's always looking for an AC contact for the church building. So he walks over, starts talking to the gentleman. It was a gentleman about his age, actually. He's mid 60s, who was the owner, and it was him and his son. And it's just them. And they were there doing an install at this really nice house. We were in a really nice, upper scale neighborhood. And so he gets the guy's information, tells him, hey, this is what I've got going on. The guy said, hey, give me a call tomorrow. Set it up. We'll come out. Well, he calls the guy the next day. No answer on the phone. You know what I mean? Next day goes by. Finally, the guy texts him back. They went back and forth like a couple of days via text before the guy set it up. I still don't know if he's ever been out there. We're probably 4 or 5 days from that day. And it's just interesting because the guy looked legit. I mean, and it's not saying that he's not, but it's just you could see that this old school mindset of I'll just kind of get to it when I get to it. And I don't know what it is. What do you think it is? Is you think it's fear holding people back from wanting to step up and make those calls, or like, what if I do this and all this work comes in, I can't handle it? Or is it
Mhm.
just people just don't like to grow into other areas and they kind of just want to wear one hat? But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I would prefer to give the business to a small company like him rather than calling one of the major guys in the area who's got the 15 trucks and so into the smaller business. But it's hard to do when, like I said, you can't even get a basic phone call back. I mean, what's your take on that? Because I know that we've changed drastically on how we handle the customer experience from beginning to end.
Right, absolutely. I think it comes back to, yeah, either sometimes these companies they get so busy and then they're just picking and choosing whatever calls, whatever comes through, and with no desire to grow. I think other times maybe we find with smaller companies, like I know for me, like they don't have the personality or they're not used to selling or talking or communicating, and so therefore they just kind of like try to avoid it as much as possible, not realizing that hey, even if it's a weakness, it needs to turn into a strength. Um, yeah, it really is because we get this all the time where people tell us with especially with small companies, hey, they don't answer the phone, they don't get to the
All the
email,
time
they
we get that.
they
Yeah.
don't do it's so hard to find somebody that's reliable, or hey, they came and quoted me, but I've never heard back from them. They
Which is nuts because
yeah, they
like
don't follow
we're
up.
not scheduled out a month. So I don't understand how people could survive and do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't know either. Um, but I think I forgot what the statistic is, but it's something where how much first impressions matter. Like
Right.
if you don't answer the first phone call or you don't get to that client within 15 minutes, I it's a wild statistic. It's well over, it might be 80%, but your chances of landing them have sunk that
Right.
much. And so first impressions matter, especially when we live in the day and age where it's, I can order my food on Uber. We have fast food. The grocery store now delivers to me. I can my Netflix, I can get movies, whatever it is, I can get it now. And so we're
Right.
living in a day and age where now matters. People don't want to wait. And so, for us being a small business, we can't get to people always the next day or within 24 hours, but we can answer the phone. We
Right.
can respond to the
That's
text. We
that's
can get to
key.
the
And
email.
that's been a huge differentiator in our financial growth was when we started to really, well, number one, when we both kind of started to delegate or kind of operate in different roles. Back when we first started, I said James was, geez, 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, was, just 20,
Mm-hmm.
19,
Yep.
20. And so I came with most of the experience and kind of just, drove the truck, so to speak. And so I'd answer the phones, schedule the estimates, go out, do the quotes. And then, we're both learning on the job. Well, as time went on, I think we both realized that, man, we're not going to be able to really grow that way if only one person's wearing all the hats. And so one of the things we were kind of forced into via some, I guess, surgery that you had to have a
Yep.
couple of times on his knees was we were forced at that point to break off into twos. And so I had to go out and do the jobs, and you really had to just make do with being, off your feet for a good number of years. It was actually a blessing because it forced us into those roles, which you've actually been able to really grow and dominate in the last couple of years. I think about just a tremendous difference that's made in how we run as a business, and not only how we've increased sales, but really just how we come off to people. Like I said, that impression. So
Mm-hmm.
I show up on the job, and people have already been touched multiple times, from the phone call to the estimate that you provide to sending the quote to follow up emails. Then I finally get out there on the job. And I can't even believe how many times I've heard when I've got there on the job, like, man, you guys have been so good from day one, from the second that I called. It's like, this has just been the greatest thing ever. How many times have you heard, man, you guys were actually the most expensive, but it's just, your communication has just been top notch. So we went with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get that feedback all the time, and I think it goes back to what we said earlier about how reputation matters. We've yet to get a bad star review.
Right.
8 years, we're 5 stars.
What's funny now, we did get one star review. Remember, want to tell a story on that one?
Which one? The 1 star or the 4 star?
Oh, we got a
It was,
4
it was a
star.
four
Yeah,
star.
yeah.
Yeah. So we've never actually had a 1 star
There was a guy
review.
that meant to give us a 4 star. Remember?
Right. Yeah. I understand where he
5 star.
put. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We did have one old gentleman one time. He put a 1 star.
He put a
and
1 star. Yeah, yeah.
But he left an awesome review and then followed it up with because in his mind he was so old he thought a 1 star was the best versus a 5, and so we had to call and quickly correct that.
That's so funny.
So our first 1 star though, but man, I mean, you talk about he wrote a paragraph, an awesome compliment.
Yeah.
So, and then the other one we ever had was I guess the only other dink we had, one gentleman refused to give a 5, he gave us a 4. And I called back later to follow up just to ask, and it's something you do. If you get a bad review, or hey, if you don't get the 5, just call up and ask him, hey, what could we have done different? What was the reasoning? And his review was, there really isn't much you could have done. He's like, you guys were awesome, but he's like, for me to give a 5 means there's nobody better. And he's like, I just don't know about that. So he's like, I got to hold my 5 until So he was kind of.
It kind of makes some sense, I guess.
In his mind. But other than that, yeah, 5 star reviews, and so reputation really mattered, because we want not only get those reviews, but that reputation where we don't have any bad experience with our clients.
Right.
We're constantly
And,
following up.
communication at every aspect is vital to really successful and long-term growth. Like I said, we're still fighting tooth and nail, like anybody else, to stay ahead of the curves and the fluctuating economy. But I couldn't imagine where we'd be now had we not really course corrected when it came to the scope of the customer experience and really started to beef up our communication, because we're excellent at it now and it's still tough. And so it boggles my mind when I show up to a job, and it's happened to you many times, I'm sure, on the quotes, where people will say, man, we called 2 other companies and like, you're the only one that called back. I've literally heard that 100 times. And I'm thinking, like, how in the world can people afford not to call back?
Right.
I mean, because like I said, we're 300 plus 5 stars reviews just on Google, not including Facebook and all these other ones. We're probably 500 or so. And we're still grinding every day to keep the schedule full. How in the world are people doing it with this breaking communication with the clientele? I just don't get it. I mean, it must be some magic pool, or maybe Angie's Leads making a comeback. Who knows? But I mean, we're fighting for it, and communication is absolutely key. And so, where would you say the biggest? I mean, obviously, we answer the phones. We try to answer the phones on the first call. What's some practical ways? Let's just say you're a solo guy and you can't answer the phone on the first call. How could a guy like that? Say you're this guy that me and my dad ran into. It's just him and his son, and obviously he's son's probably doing more of the work because of the age gap. How could somebody like that, or how could a small guy still get better and round out their communication if they can't answer the phone on the first call?
Yeah, definitely. There are modern tools that we have that are great, and it really starts. First impressions matter. So basics, you should have a website, you should have a Google business page, you should have an email address. Everything should you should have a business number, all that good stuff. You should want to look like a legit business, but then you should have a CRM system.
Hmm.
They're not expensive.
Which for people who may not know what that is, how would you briefly describe that?
I mean, a CRM, it's basically taking all that you would write down on paper, your contact information, your schedule, your calendar, whatever you're using, and it just puts it really into
It's like
one
your
app.
digital office.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It takes away from really having an administrative person.
Yeah.
It becomes an administrative person. So I think that's huge because they can get in relatively cheap to get into a good CRM that can do a really good job.
Hmm.
To be able to be able to communicate with people because you can write down, you can schedule follow ups on it, all that good stuff. Keep you more scheduled. And then it, but really the benefit really does if somebody sends in a form, if somebody emails you, if somebody calls, you got to answer it. I mean, there's no getting away from that. I know we're in the AI age and now you can get answering services and things like that.
Right.
But the reason why we've kind of shied away from that is because there's still the human element
Yep.
and it hasn't gotten there yet. And so, because we find, and the reason why we also like to show up and do in-person estimates and
Right. I was going to say, I was
yeah,
going to mention that.
yeah, and meet the clients, we want to show a face, we want to show a smile because nothing beats the, the human element of it. Like, to
Yeah. I
go
mean,
sit there.
here's a good example is last week, or was it last week or the week before? 3 jobs in a row, and I landed 3 5-star reviews. Now, I don't take full credit for that because the reason is because the full scope of our customer experience.
Right.
Because you answered the phone, you called, you went out and did an in-person quote. I mean, man, your I guess quoting process has really grown over the years as well, as far, having the iPad with a slideshow and I mean, really being able to the goals, I said one of your goals is to sit down with them at the table and be able to really
Right.
break it down. I mean, and so by the time I get to the job, it's like it's a softball right down the middle. So all I have to do is really just do a great job and smile. It's really pretty easy at that point. And that's all I did at these last ones. And then I just asked them for the review at the end. And I said, hey, by the way, when you get a receipt for your, whatever payment form they chose, there'll be a link to our Google page. And I'll, like I said, the personal element. So what I'll do is I'll tell them, it's like, hey, and I come up with different little kind of phrases to use or, jokes to throw out there. But I think these last couple times I told people, it's like, hey, we got that link to our Google page. If you could take 2 minutes and just leave us a 5-star review, I'll tell them, it's like, it's literally our bread and butter these days. You know what I mean? I said, we're small business, we don't invest a ton in physical marketing, wish we were Morris Bart and we had a billboard on every corner from here to Alabama. And for those not around here, he's one of those, injury attorney lawyers who's literally, I mean, markets and campaigns like nonstop, billboards everywhere, multiple states. And so I'll say that, hey, I wish we were Morris Bart, but we're not, we can't advertise on every corner. And they always laugh. They always chuckle. And I said, but we really appreciate it. It goes a long way. And then a lot of the times I'll mention, just things about my personal life, it's like, whether it's, hey, we serve our community through our local church. And every time somebody uses our services is not only, takes care of us and our family, but we receive so we can give, and
Right.
so I always add these human elements to it. And man, I mean, it proved itself. 3 5-star reviews in a row with a 2-second, 2-minute, closing there right before I left the job, just kind of sandwiched between your service at the beginning and doing a great job. And it works every time. And so there's so many different levels of communication that could really make that experience better for a lot of people that I think a lot of dudes just leave on the table. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, so point number one, to kind of recap that for the solo guys out there, get a CRM. Get a CRM, utilize that to its max capability because there's a ton of automated features that could really make customer interactions much, much better. And then I think the second thing on that, we're big on in-person estimates. So
Yeah.
a lot of guys that don't do that, I mean, it works sometimes, but I mean, it's really tough. What would you say, like, why we don't do remote quotes for the most part? Every once in a while, if it's something crazy,
Right.
where we know
right.
it's either something we're not going to get or it's like 2 hours away or something, and we're just not totally sure about it. But very rarely. But what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, we found because we did test it, I think, for a period, some remote quotes
A while back.
Yeah, and we just found that our closing percentages were so much better going in person.
Yeah.
Because we found most people who did shop, you had the customer that would call and you were their only person they were getting a quote for, and so immediately like, well, if I give them a good price and we represent the company well, like there's a good chance to sell them. And then when you meet the other clients that are getting multiple quotes and, 3, maybe sometimes 4 or 5, depending on if they don't like the prices, you find that some of those quotes were remote, other guys showed up. And so then they're comparing, you know, really, let's say the prices are the same. Now they're comparing what were the services and then who did I like better?
Yeah.
Who did enough explaining, walking around, or who did I like, or who came across a certain way. And so, you can have somebody walk up, and if they look rough, sound rough, talk rough, and you just get a bad feeling from them, I'm not bringing you to my house.
Right.
But you show up with a uniform, you show up with a smile on your face, you show up educated, you show up, you know what you're talking about, and you're there because we always like to say we want to treat your house like if it was my house.
Right.
And so I'm invested in this. We're here to do a good job. And when they see that and that comes across, and they're more likely to really go with you over the other company A or B or C. And so I think it just really just changed the game, and it builds relationships too.
Yeah.
Because now when these people call us back, we know who they are. We know their dog's name. We know what the house looks like. We know what's going on, that, hey, they're going to be painting here soon, or maybe they're adding an addition, or maybe they're looking to sell and get into a new property. And so not only do we know them, but then they know us as well. So we've had some clients now we've been doing. I think about one client we did the first time met him, really tough guy. And he was so hard to sell. And I remember because he wanted
immediately who you're talking about.
And he wanted a big quote, and then he was a big negotiator. And so he thought we were kind of like car salesmen. We was like, come on, you don't negotiate. And it's like, well, no, sir. We just found real quickly that instead of trying to shoot for the moon at every customer and trying to win big, we're just going to give them a fair price. We're going to, what is it going to cost us? What do we need to make profit wise? What are our margins? And then we're just going to give you the price. I said, maybe sometimes there's a little bit of a wiggle room, but for the most part, we're giving you the price is the price.
Right.
And so, but he ended up hiring us just for the house. Didn't do all the other services, but, and once again, harsh, fierce person, intimidating. I mean, he was tough. He came across mean, all those things.
Yeah.
But by the end of just keeping a smile and just telling, encouraging, standing on what we do, and just once again, just really just kindness, not matching that, the energy, just big smile on our face, go out, deliver an awesome service. And now he's been our client for 5-6 straight years.
And we literally wash his house every 6 months now.
Every 6 months,
Like
do a bunch of
clockwork.
other services, love us. And not only have we built that relationship, now it's just like, calls, first name, hey, James, how's it going? Okay, you and Roy coming out? Awesome. Put it on the calendar. There's no questions, nothing like that.
Yep.
Now, he still expects a great service. He may nitpick here or there, which once again, we don't mind because we're there to give him the best experience possible. And so we just live by our motto with that.
I mean, I would say at this point, I actually enjoy going out there because it's like, because it's just gotten more comfortable. The last time we did it, me and my dad went. And so that was great because now you got two 60-year-old guys in their 60s, talking. And so they're having a good time. And, this gentleman built that house.
Right.
And so he starts talking shop with my dad because my dad's a construction guy. And they start talking about, man, how he did the inside. I mean, come to find out, he built this thing. He contracted it himself. He did all the contracting work. He hired all the guys and ran the crews. And, we oversaw it all. And, man, he really put a lot of detail on this property. It makes sense why he was so hard on you when he went out the first time, because this is like his crown jewel, And so, but now, man, we were just having a great time out there. He's giving us cold drinks on the way out, it's a pleasant experience with him. So much so that me and my dad were talking about him the other day because we're considering at some point next year, hopefully there'll be enough funds. I can do a little addition to my house because I got a tiny little house. We're looking to expand the master bedroom and add a second bathroom. Yes, I live in a house with one bathroom. It's as uncomfortable as you think it might be. But, and so we were just talking about, I'd have to get an architect to draw up plans again. They're very strict in this area. Have to get a structural engineer and all that to draw up the plans. The people I used before for the last little addition we did, they were super old. I don't even know if they're alive anymore. But my dad mentioned, he was like, hey, why don't you call that guy, because he knows everybody. He had a running list of quality people that he already had gone through an extreme vetting process.
Right.
And I was like, man, that's actually a really good idea. Because anybody that he's willing to recommend, us included, is going to be worth their weight.
Right.
And so I really value him now as a customer, and even more so as just, as a friend. We're friendly at this point now. And so It's really been nice growing with him.
And here's what's cool with that. When you build those relationships and they know who you are, people naturally will market for you and not even realize it. Remember, he was telling us the story where he was there and he was at a meeting with a bunch of other guys in his local area. And I guess we were coming up on the calendar and they were just talking. He's like, yeah, I got All Things Services coming out to wash my house. And then the next guy's like, you use All Things Services. I use All Things Services. And then they're
Right.
just recommending us, just talking about us because, like, once again, we've been washing this gentleman's house twice a year for 5 years now. And
Hmm.
so it's just common for him to say, yeah, these Roy and James wash my house. You know, they're
Right.
awesome. And so when you build those relationships, now you're building really people that are going to recommend you and really be happy to talk about your service, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's our goal. We want people to um, benefit from our service, but then also we have such a good relationship that they're going to use us every year, but then also recommend us to everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, like I said, if we were to base success solely on how much money we were taking in, then a lot of that gets lost in the shuffle.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I see a value in a relationship with this gentleman now that I can't put a dollar amount on. And so it's just something to think about, for you guys out there that are in a similar boat. If you want to kind of reacquire that fire to increase sales, let's get back to some of the basics about just appreciating the customer experience. And it really kind of leads us into the next point, which was you take a guy like this gentleman who is like kind of a tough cookie. It can be intimidating, especially when there's an actual problem that happens.
Mhm.
I mean, we sometimes there's mistakes that happen, miscommunications, accidents. Obviously, most guys in our boat, we're the small business, whether you're a plumber, electrician, pressure washer, you do some type of training and what do you call it, apprenticeship for some of those more professional ones for sure, those more elite ones, I guess. But still, you don't know till you know, and you get out on a job and something happens and how to handle those problems. And so I think one thing that we've really mastered, I think, and I could say master because that's something that was very difficult at the beginning of the business, which is really handling problems like professionals. Handle a problem like a pro. You can't be intimidated or scared or backed into a corner because a legitimate mistake or a point of conflict comes up. It was difficult at the beginning. It really was because for us, it's like, especially as a small business and, it's just me and you, like it was hard not to take stuff personal at the beginning.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like somebody's like, oh, you did this, you did that. And then, we're taking it as this personal attack when we really have to get that mindset of, no, this is a business. I'm just the face of the business. I don't have to let this totally affect my emotional state. How would a business, if I was working for this place, handle those issues or those conflicts? And I see a lot of guys really mess up in that area. And I know that for a fact because we're part of a ton of different groups on Facebook for small businesses and guys that do work like us. And the way that some of these guys handle issues or their advice for handling issues sometimes is crazy. I mean, I can't even repeat some of the stuff that these guys will say or do. But we've had to learn to handle issues like a pro. And so what's your reflection on that? Because man, that's been, I mean, it never goes away. There's always
Yeah.
a time or a season where that happens.
I remember early on when we first would have issues and we had some mentors and people that could reach out to and get some help, some experience. And I remember they were very big. A professional business doesn't run away problems. They run to the problem.
Right.
And so that was the big thing. You have to change your mindset. We're going to run to the problem. We're here to fix problems. If they're hired, just like when they hired you, for us, the house is green, has algae everywhere. Well, they're hiring us to fix a problem. So now when a problem arises, it's your job to fix it, to be a professional, to be a pro. So even if you don't have the answers all the time, you got to conduct yourself. No, we're the professional, and we're going to figure it out. We're going to find a way. So that means we'll reach out to other industries. We'll reach out to other basically professional experts and figure this out for them and solve that problem. And so when we've had issues arise, that's what we did. We reached out to the experts.
And I mean, here we are 7 years in that. I don't think there's ever been, we've had some legitimate major issues come up on jobs, and there hasn't been a single one that we haven't gotten through.
Yeah,
Not that I remember.
we resolved all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Resolved all of them. One of them, sadly, was an insurance claim, but
Yeah.
hey, we still had the heart. We're going to fix it.
And that guy still calls us though for
We
work,
still do work. Yep, still do work.
which is wild. And so why do you,
But why though? I think it was the relationship, the way we handled it from day one. We never dodged the call. We answered any question he had. When he challenged, when he pushed back, we were willing to talk it out, answer it, and be a pro with it.
Yeah.
And, and take it on the chin when it came to, okay, we messed up. It's going to fall on our lap and we'll take the insurance claim.
Well, and here's the thing is, are there situations where the customers are unreasonable or nitpicking because they want a discount? I saw one of the things in one of the groups the other day where a lady was demanding a discount from this guy or $500 back because she felt she didn't like the service, but she refused to meet him out there to go over what the issues were. She just wanted him to go out and basically spend a whole nother day doing a bunch of stuff. And so he's going back and forth with all these people on the group on how to handle that. And I'm thinking how we would have handled it. Well, we'd have just went back out, did our work, and if she didn't pay us, it's on her.
Right.
I mean, so many people get hung up on this, like that. You said you have to evaluate what's going to be more beneficial in the long term. Now I know we all need income. There's times where we're struggling to pay the bills. I get that, but at the end of the day, we'll most likely get through those situations. But how's this going to affect us in the long term? And so sometimes, like you said, it's better just to take it on the chin, take the loss, and deal and keep that reputation rather than get that money and then totally, I guess negate that relationship, but also possibly a bad review, and then
Right.
that seeping into other conversations that person might have with somebody else about your particular business. And so that's been a difficult kind of thing for us, but I think we found a lot of success in that because at the very least we know that we're operating in integrity. We've done the right thing,
Right.
even if somebody's taken advantage of. And here's the fact of the matter: in all the years we've been in business, we've only gotten burned one time out of hundreds of thousands of dollars that have come through this business. And the crazy thing was, it wasn't for a huge contract, wasn't for thousands of dollars. It was for like, how much was it? Like $200-300?
It's $300.
Yeah,
Yeah. They paid half of it. They asked us to split the check. And of course, we're nice people. So we're like, we don't do that, but we'll split the check. So they wrote two, cash half of it now, cash the other half in 2 weeks. And then the first half cleared. 2 weeks later, we cashed it. And then they somehow, we didn't know it was possible, but could cancel the check within 48 hours.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Never got paid. But they did put us on the, I think, canceled our number or something at one point. And even with that, we were professionals with it. We didn't threaten them. We didn't hassle them. We would just, I called, no answer. Called 3 days, talked to him, followed up the following week, gave it another week, followed up, and then we just let it go.
Can you think of a time where there was a customer issue or a problem or a conflict that once it was all said and done, it actually worked out to be a huge positive, and it rolled into more work or an open door for something else? I'm trying to think. I know there's been a ton.
Right.
But you have a better memory than me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good story where there was an issue. I'll use this one. So there was one lady we washed her house, and I'm sure there's better ones, but this is the first one's coming to my mind. And there was an accident where there was like brick above some stucco, and it basically had discolored the paint because there was a miscommunication, and the cleaner got left behind, so it discolored the paint. And she called and said, "Hey, look at this." And so pretty much gave 3 options. Hey, we'll come out, repaint it. We'll hire a guy if you want them, or we can give you a discount to come do some more services.
Mm-hmm.
And she liked the way we handled it, was super happy about it, said, "Hey, I was going to repaint some of that anyways. I got the paint. I'll paint it myself. Come on and give me that free service." And then because of that, we already were doing one of her neighbors. That's why we landed her. And then because of that, we landed her neighbor after that.
Right.
And so had we not handled that well and blown her off, or, tried to fight it or blame it on her, or, just not find the resolution she wanted. If she said, "Hey, I don't want you to paint it. I don't want your free service. I want you to hire my painter to go do it and fix your issue." And if we'd said no, instead of doing it, once again, resolving the problem that made her feel at ease and that we were still looking for her best interest, she could have easily blown us off and then told the neighbor that we'd already been working for while we got the first place her horrible experience, and then tell the other neighbor. And the next you know, that neighborhood where our reputation spread around, like, these are not good guys.
Right.
So don't work for it. But instead, because we solved it, our reputation to this day, we still wash those houses in that area.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's just handling problems before the problems handle you. It's really what it comes down to. It's not always comfortable. It's definitely intimidating at times, but this is where, like, if you're going to be in business, you have to be willing to confront that. You have to be willing to confront the weaknesses in yourself and say, "You know what? I've got to make this happen." You know what I mean? I know it's difficult to make those calls sometimes. It's humbling to go back to a property where you've legitimately had a mistake or messed something up. But there's nothing more satisfying or gratifying than resolving that solution like a man, with integrity. And then maybe the person doesn't call you back again, but at least you can hang your head. You can keep your head high, knowing that you did everything to make that as good as possible. And so that really kind of goes into the next segment, which is creating a successful brand or a consistent branding experience across all aspects of your business. Because if we, like I said, we have the truck wrap, we've got all the great equipment, we've you got the great shirts, and you can tell we keep it pretty minimal around here, because we know at the end of the day those things are for a moment. You know what I mean? What matters is who we are, our brand, our customer experience from start to finish. You can have all those things and lack in one, and it's just a total waste of time. And so for us, we've kind of coined ourselves as the no hassle experience. And so once again, we didn't originate any of this stuff. We've borrowed from people around the world. Feel free to borrow from us. That's why we're doing these podcasts. But that's our personal kind of branding motto, the no hassle experience. What does that really mean? I mean, as the primary sales guy, you know, what does that mean to you? How have you really kind of pitched that to folks or helped them understand that, and how does that really, I guess, encompass who we are now versus kind of how we operated in the first 3 years or so?
Yeah, I'm going to use this analogy because I think more people, this hits, but it's kind of like when you go to buy a car. And I literally was just seeing a friend post this on social media that he was like, I'm going to have to buy a car here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm just dreading to
Right.
even start thinking about it
Right.
because it's such a hassle.
It is.
There's so many sleazy people. You really don't know what you're buying sometimes.
Got to go talk to
There's-
the manager.
Right.
Like,
And then they're
it's a
trying to sell
nightmare.
you. And then it's like, well, am I getting the best price or is this marked up from the guy down the road? Like there's all these things. And recently had to buy a van. I did not really enjoy the experience at all. I ended up buying from a person and the gentleman I bought from, by the end of it, I'd give him a B, B plus,
But that's
it
why
was
people are
decent.
willing to go to Carvana, the 20
Right.
cent,
To avoid-
20% more.
Yeah, they
just
don't
to
want to deal
avoid
with the
all that.
hassle.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there was a hassle.
Yeah.
I did not like it. I said, I'm good for a decade. I am not looking forward to buy a car. And if I do, the best case is when you got all the money to just say, hey, here's the check. Give me the car exactly what I want. I don't want to search or look or figure this stuff out.
Mhm.
But so it's kind of that way. We wanted to take the hassle out of it. So whether it's Miss Mary Jane, the elderly woman down the street, or whether it's, the 24-year-old single mom, or, it's the family guy, or it's the businessman that, I'm just so busy. I just need you to do a good job and do it right.
Mhm.
Whatever we wanted to fit each one of our clients' situation. So what is their need and how can we fill it?
Right.
Once again, it's built around what we do. Our services, we're exterior cleaners. We're going to clean roofs, windows, houses, driveways, concrete, stain removal. All for commercial clients, we do custom maintenance packaging. So what's your need? How can we fill it? And really just take the hassle out of it. And so that goes back to, like we talked about at the beginning, communication. We're going to give you excellent communication. And at the same time, we're not going to give you over communication.
Right.
It's going to be straight to the point. Because we've dealt with businessmen. They're so busy, they can't meet me out for the estimate. Well, okay, I'm not going to fight you for it. I'll go take a look at it, be
Mhm.
brief on the phone, tell you what you need to hear because they're hey, I just need to be straight to the point.
Mhm.
And so we're straight to the point,
Yeah.
straight shooters. And then they're like, all right, come on, do my house. We do an awesome job. They don't have to worry about it. Normally, they're not even home. They come back, hey, it looks awesome. Let me send the check. And the next thing you know, we're washing the house every year with literally minimum communication.
Right.
They just need somebody to show out who's going to show up on time, say what they're going to do, and actually do what they say.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I think we've kind of customized the hassle where, okay, how can we remove your hassle? If it's the woman that, hey, I just can't, it's a small house. I can't do this myself. I need help. Okay, well, we can do it. But for a fair price,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, jack it up on you or try to win you over somewhere. We're going to do a really good job for you and take care of your property. So, and so that's where it's the no hassle, but it really applies differently to, I think, each client and kind of different
Yeah,
customers.
it does. And I think that's really where we, as business owners, you have to be willing to conform a little bit. You have to be pliable to each situation. It's not a one size fits all. And I think a lot of guys said they get into business because they're good at doing something. We came in with a strong work ethic, but we didn't necessarily have the skill set that we have now after running the business for 7 years. And so a lot of people stay stuck in that mode and they just accentuate on the fact that, hey, I can provide a great service, but then they fall through on all those other things. And a conflict arises or maybe even the job goes well, but because they haven't really taken that full scope of, I'm providing an experience for this person, they leave a lot on the table, maybe don't retain the customer for down the road, or they don't get a review and they just kind of move on. There's guys that we've known that have been in business 20, 30, 40, 30 years that, don't keep running records, don't have a website, those kinds of things. And, that old school mentality. Well, that worked for a season, but that's just not going to cut it these days. Like I said, where people they have, at their fingertips access to every single company that does what we do from here, to an hour and a half away or even further if they want, a big pool to choose from. And so, yeah, I think for me, the no hassle experience has been a lot of that. Just, I try to approach it as a homeowner. We put a small addition on my house a couple of years ago, and my dad, who's a construction guy, did 90% of the work. we needed at one point an electrician to come in and just, run wires because, my dad's not licensed to do that. And just even that one experience with that one electrician was a hassle. Real nice when I met him, came out initially, gave the quote, but then to get him out there to do the job, to complete it, and then he had to come and do the inspection with the local authorities here. I mean, man, it was like pulling teeth. I mean, by the end of it, when he came out for the final inspection, I could totally tell like this was just a detour in his day. This wasn't like, hey, I'm coming to finish out this job. Man, this place is going to look great. Congratulations on you guys on the addition. It was just like I was a total inconvenience for him for that day. I could totally feel it. You know what I mean? And it was just like, wow, man, would I call this guy again? I don't think so. You know what I mean? And his price wasn't even all that great. So what's the point if he's not going to provide that good experience? And so I think for us, it's really challenged me personally as a man on the job to really, learn to do what our business name is, All Things Services. And it comes out of a scripture in the Bible that says, I'll become all things to all men that I might, save some. And so it's really that concept of, to the weaker person, I'll be weak. To the strong, I'll be strong. To the person who needs this, I'll be that. You need comfort, I'll be a comforter. And so I try to keep that mentality when I'm on the job and not get caught up in, okay, well, this is what we quoted rigidly. It's got to stick to that, and if you try to get me outside of that, then, I'm going to fight you on this. And, and yeah, there's sometimes people want to take advantage of that. For example, you might quote a job where we're cleaning a patio and they agree to move all the stuff. That will take us an extra 30 minutes and it's 100 degrees outside. So that may as well be an hour, to put everything away, put it back. That's happened a bunch of times. People, oh yeah, we'll get it moved for you. And then we show up on the job and it's not moved. You know what I mean? And this is where I have a choice. I could either, enforce this and say, hey, well, we're going to have to tack on the $75 or whatever we charge move fee, depending on the size of the stuff. Or you just kind of take it, get it done, make it happen, and still strive for that 5-star review. Every situation's slightly different, but for the most part, whenever I make the decision to just go ahead and do it, and I let them know kindly at the end, like, hey, we went ahead and took care of that stuff for you. Don't worry about it. But man, I appreciate if you could leave us the review. It almost always flips for our benefit at that point.
Right.
And so that's where we just, as business owners, have to be, you have to have a I guess an idea in your mind and in your life and in your business model of what you provide and how you can provide that at less of a hassle for people. You know what I mean? And then are you going to be committed to that? You know what I mean? Because if you want to stick to the bullet, to the decimal point on everything, it may not always work out in the long run. And so that's our goal. Yeah, we deal with rude people. We deal with, just kind of some shady issues at time. But for the most part, if we come at it with this kind of no hassle philosophy, it usually works out.
Right.
I think of a time where we've really gotten totally, yeah, we've done a little extra work for maybe, we didn't get compensated immediately for it, but it usually always works out for our benefit.
Right.
That's what I remember by it. And so that's really creating that brand across every board of your life. So no hassle experience for us starts from the phone call all the way to the follow-up. Well, here's the thing. If sometimes it goes past that because sometimes we don't maybe get that review, but you've got a system in place where we'll still follow with people via the customer relations software and then via phone to make sure the job came out okay. Mm-hmm. And you've seen tremendous success in that. Have you seen a growth in that, or yeah, because I'm sure you've had people during those follow-ups who've said, you know what, yeah, I'll go back and leave the review, or you know what, by the way, I meant to have you come out and quote my mom's house and things like that. And so, no hassle experience expands way outside even the completion of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Like so from the first call to the estimate to the scheduling of the job to the follow-ups leading up to us coming to do the job, coming out doing the job that day, to when we invoice, collect the check, payments done. For us, it doesn't stop. Okay, we got the check, we're done. Right after that, they're going to get a follow-up for the review. But then also we reach out with a nice offer to say, hey, if you got your mom, family member, friends, recommend us, give them this code. And you get a hit off that code. In fact, one of the jobs we did recently for a commercial front of the building wash was because they were friends with a lady. We washed her house and she gave him the code, cashed in the code, came out, got his wash. And then we even follow up 30 days later just to make sure, hey, just wanted to make sure the job was great. Mm-hmm. Was there any issues? Let us know. And maybe once we've ever got a follow-up where someone said, hey, there actually was. And what we did was we went out and remedied it for that way, because we want to make sure you had an awesome experience.
Right.
And so we'd rather rather than you maybe having buyer's remorse, we're able to go out there and fix that issue. So that way you're like, I had a
No, that
pleasant
has
experience.
happened.
So
That's been pretty cool. People who there was maybe something that they were not satisfied with, but because life is busy, they didn't call. And you call, it actually stirs up a problem, but then we're able to go out and solve it and win the person over for, lock them in basically at that point.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's an awesome thing. It's really not rocket science, but what it's going to take, I think, for us to continue to grow in that way, and for guys out there who are in similar spots, is to kind of examine or audit yourself as you're working. We can't be afraid to do those things. I know for myself personally, that was an area at the beginning of the business where, even in life at that time, I had a difficult time with, sitting down and like really examining how I am, what I'm doing, what's my contribution to this? Am I really giving it 100%? Am I doing my best? As a man, like we really have to be able to just examine ourselves to make sure that we're actually centered and we're doing right first.
Yep.
That can be tough for people, you know what I mean? But it's really done a lot for us, I think, as we grow in a business, because at the end of the day, if the business is failing or if it's fledgling, it's yeah, you can blame some on the economy, but a lot of it can be corrected, by just taking a hard look at yourself. I mean, how's that kind of changed your mindset and how you operate on a daily basis over the couple of years?
Yeah, I think you're, especially when I first was doing estimates and meeting people in person and calling people, those things, I would examine it every time. So after finishing that estimate, I'd immediately run it over my head. What did I do good? What did I do bad? Where could I improve on? Did it get awkward? Was there something where they didn't seem interested? So how can I improve that
Hmm.
experience? And really, it starts with simple way. If you don't have the experience, or even if you do and you've really never chased it, is what do you like to buy and what do you
Right.
look for? And so, I think about whenever I'm buying things, well, first, especially, go to the restaurant experience, when you have a waiter that's well informed, that's very polite, that's actually taking care of your needs and doesn't seem disinterested or is not blowing you off, or just rude. I mean, that that's a plus, right? Like, I'll come back to this place because I had a good experience, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so first, just making sure, hey, we're that smile on our face, happy go getter. The day's awesome, and also making that client feel like $1,000,000.
Yeah.
Like, I'm interested. You're my, like, they're the last client, like the last
Hmm.
one you may service, and you want to, your reputation matters. And
Yeah.
so when you treat people like that, it goes a long way. And then, like we were saying, just back to that communication,
Hmm.
because nobody likes it when you get handed a bill at the end and now there's this random charge you weren't expecting.
Right.
Nobody likes that. If were to go to the mechanic and they tell me it's gonna be $200, and then I go to pay and they're like, it's 350 because we actually had to do this, 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 this.
Right.
It's like, why wasn't that communicated? What did
Right.
you do for an extra $150? So having that communication where, hey, here's what you're paying for. Like, so when we go quote jobs, when we send them the jobs, we like to lay out as much as possible where they know exactly what we're gonna do. So there's
Hmm.
no questions, there's no guesswork. Okay, here's what they said they're gonna do, here's what it's gonna look like, and then give them a price that, hey, it's not going to change on you. Now,
Hmm.
yeah, they can add services and we can do things, but for what we've agreed upon, that's the price.
Yeah.
We're not going to flip on you. And yes, have we done jobs where we're in the middle of it and we're like, this should have been doubled because we totally misquoted, especially
Right.
early on?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Has there been other jobs where we're like, I feel like we kind of over quoted this one because we're done 10 times faster than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So you'll find that, especially if you're doing it in the service industry, but you got to stick to what you said. You got to be honest, upright, and then really just having that integrity to
Yeah.
to get the job done right and actually care for people. Like, we approach every client, every house. Like, if this was my house, how would I want it done and approached? And so I think you improve on those experiences, and then after that, key things. Make sure you have a website. Make sure you have um, a CRM in place. That way you're following up with people. You got people's numbers, their names. So if they call, like, you know exactly who it is on the phone. You're not having to get all the information again. I mean, that's such a benefit, especially when we get somebody who's called that we maybe haven't washed for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Why was it this much? Was it that? Was it?" And it's like, I got the whole history,
Yeah.
lined up. They're written down. They're like, "Oh, so they remember me." It's like, "Yep, we remember you."
Yeah.
And so, but have the CRM, have the website, think about what do you like for your experience, and then try to apply that to your business.
Yeah.
Usually for put those
And
in
then ask
place.
other people, ask family
Right.
members, ask friends, like, hey, what are you looking for when you call a service-based business? What are your dislikes? What are your likes? What would you prefer to happen? and then just compile those and start adding them incrementally into how you do business. And so my encouragement this is just really think of one thing this week that you could do or we could do to elevate our full customer experience. Cause I guarantee there's always something, you know what I mean? And so for me personally, like I remember just the last couple of weeks, I really tried to make it more of a point to, to try to get the customer to do a walk around. It's kind of difficult, especially in our business, because people, for the most part, what we 98% of the time we're outside. We rarely go inside. We rarely do interior window cleaning. So a lot of times people aren't home. And so I kind of got used to a pattern of people not being there. You know what I mean? But I wanted to challenge myself the last few times that people were there. I said, you know what? That's part of the experience that I don't get to apply every time. So when the person's home, I challenge myself, hey, you want to come out and do a walk around? You know what I mean? So that was one area that I found that I could really expand that customer experience a little bit more and just really lock in the referral, the 5-star review. I mean, there's been times recently where, a $300 tip on a job. I mean, that was $300. So, I mean, people are willing to give and to treat us right. If you're just willing, like I said, to treat them like $1 million, they're willing to give. And we found, and I don't know, maybe it's somebody else's experience out there. Oftentimes the people that we get the most from, whether it's referrals, the reviews or monetary, compensation through tips or more jobs, are usually through people that are middle income.
Yeah.
So don't discount the middle income people. You know what I mean? Can't get in this mindset of like, you've got to be doing $1 million clients every day in order to make it. There's something that we could tell, we could, affirm to as people that do ministry, active ministry, is one thing we've learned early on is that ministry is people. As a pastor, as a minister, you're only going to be effective if there's people actually to minister to. Well, it's the same thing in business. Business isn't completing the job. Business isn't that P&L report at the end of the month. Those are some of the components of business, but business is people. A service-based business is people. If you don't have people, you don't have business. And so, yeah, we've got to just, really just dial in and get back to the fullness of that customer experience. And I guarantee we'll all be able to see an increase coming into 2026. So,
absolutely.
All right, cool, man. Well, that was a good first podcast. And so, hey, if anybody gets any information out of this or any value out of this, please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what topics you might like to hear discussed, service-based business related, anything business related. We'd love to talk and chat with you about it. If you're in the New Orleans area and you want to come hang out with us, hey, the garage door's open. Give us a shout. We'd love to have you come by. So until next time, this is Roy and
James,
reminding you always that there's a lot of folks doing good work, but great work is in the details. Take care. God bless.